Hey everybody, I am back with a spoiler review of the sequel to The Lion King, the uh, director video, Disney's The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. Now, I already did my review of the first 1994 Disney animated uh, Lion King, which should be up on my YouTube channel right now. Speaking of which, follow me in the links in the description below. Smash that like button. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think of the Lion King films. Now, we want to go right into this. So this is directed by Daryl Rooney, and it stars Matthew Broderick as Simba. Cam Clark provides the singing voice. Nave Campbell as his daughter Kiara. Liz Calloway provides Kiara's singing voice. Michelle Horn voiced young Kiara. Jason Marsden provides the voice of Kovu. Gene Miller provides the singing voice. Ryan O'Donoghue provides the voice of a young Kovu. Suzanne Pleshette as Zira. Catherine Turner, the singing voice. Moria Kelly as Nala. Nathan Lane, Ernie Sabala returns as Timon and Pumbaa. Robert Gilliam as Rafiki. Edward Hebert takes on the role of Zazu after Aaron Atkinson. Meredith Scott Lynn voices Vitani, Zira's daughter. James Earl Jones provides a short voice for Mufasa. Jim Cummings as Scar for a short little, cameo thingy. Andy Dick as Nuka, Zira's son. So this picks up not too long after the events of at least a few years after the events of the first film. Now, this is probably one of the most successful direct-to-video Disney films in the late 90s into the early 2000s. There's been a lot of them, but there's only a select few that actually people really enjoy. But looking back on them, I'm pretty sure people will hold them in high regard now. But at the time, we've been so inundated with those, it kind of seemed like overkill because it was dangerously close to being like The Land of Before Time, where that one had like a buttload of sequels and spin-offs that kind of, thank God, eventually stopped. But it was like a lot. And it was like a thing at the time with direct-to-video sequels where like we're just being inundated with those things, and it was driving people crazy. And of course, they're trying to drive up sales with Blockbuster and other, video VHS tapes and stuff like that. Hell, like even getting into the DVDs when they were starting to become a thing, here and there was some direct-to-video kind of sequels. Some were good, some were not. But Lion King 2 was one of the most successful ones because the actors involved were really giving it all in these performances. I kid you not. It was really good. But anyway, now that Simba is king of the Pride Lands now, he has his own child. But unlike how Mufasa was parenting, Simba, because at least subconsciously, he's trying to do something, drastically different, knowing full well how he was when he was a kid. He's trying to circumvent any kind of situations that landed him in the predicament that he was in. There's some parallels to that where, like, there's certain things that your parents usually do that they was raising you up on, that you trying to do something drastically different or try to do it drastically the same. Here in Simba's case, because in a way he's still haunted by the events of what he went through as a kid with his uncle and everything like that. He has been cuddling his daughter and kind of putting her in like a bubble and constantly having her watched because he was not watched. And because of that, Scar ends up, tricking him into leaving and killing his father. He does not want his daughter going through that similar mistake. So he's trying to be a helicopter parent, essentially. And you can understand Simba's, worries and need to, protect his kid at all costs. Because Mufasa, on the other hand, gave his son a little bit more leeway, but he, I guess it's kind of like which one was the more ideal scenario where one gave their kid, some, freedom. Some might argue a little too much freedom, and others might say, "Oh, you're coddling your kid too much," where you don't allow them to make mistakes and learn from it. So it's a delicate balance for parents to actually have to navigate to figure out, okay, what's you gotta do what's works for you, I guess. But it's just like that fine line you gotta walk between giving the kid, the necessary freedom to make mistakes and learn from it so they can learn responsibilities and blah blah blah. And the other where it's like, I want to make sure that no threat comes to my kid and that I'm there to catch them because the world is a dangerous place kind of situation. So, Simba has Timon and Pumbaa falling behind her, behind Nala to make sure she's not getting into any kind of trouble. And it's like, I like Timon and Pumbaa, but why would you send the most goofiest dudes possible for this big responsibility? But then Nala sees them creeping up because they wasn't very stealthy. She ends up sneaking off while those two idiots were arguing, and then she ends up going right into the Outlands, where kind of the tangential this movie's version of the Elephant Graveyard. She ends up going off into the Outlands, even though she was told not to go. Very parallel to what Simba had to do, deal with. She ends up bumping into this young cub named Kovu, and they get into like a bickering thing about like, oh, my dad told me not to trust any outsiders. Oh, you do everything your dad tells you to do. And if the first movie is like Hamlet, this movie is definitely the Romeo and Juliet allegory, where two rival clans, had these, particular people fall in love with each other, even though the other clans don't like each other, kind of situation. And of course, Kovu's like the local bad boy the young girl falls for, kind of thing. I think that's in the long run is bad for young girls to watch because they all fall into the trappings of the bad boy. Of course, it works out here in Kiara's case, but in general, 9 times out of 10, not a good idea, not an ideal situation. That dads with daughters, by and large, if they're got some good character, know full well not a situation they want their daughter to hook up with, let alone be with. But they escape this alligator pit or crocodile pit, whichever one. What is it? Crocodile pit, alligator. crocodile pit, and she is immediately smitten with him because he was brave enough to help her out. And she did her due diligence to help him out as he was trying to lead the crocodiles away from her. So they managed to escape the crocodile infested waters. She's smitten with him, and then she's tried to play tag with him, and of course Kovu doesn't understand because Kiara was raised in a very playful manner. She never learned how to be an actual lion, like the duties of a lion. She's been spending a lot of time just because everything's been so peaceful. She's been, and things have been kind of handed to her in a way. It's kind of like whole Princess Jasmine kind of situation. Which now I think about it, Kiara would be technically a Disney princess, and nobody ever counts her that way. I did years ago. I did a Disney princess ranking, and I do not think I put Kiara on that list because she was so, bottom of the barrel. She's almost forgotten. Technically, she will be a Disney princess. But anyway, she's been coddled so much and everything's been so peaceful. She's been, for the most part, been playing without being taught how to hunt like a lion, which becomes like a detriment to her later on. We'll see in a second. But she asked Kovu, "What's wrong with you? Don't you know how to play?" And conversely, Kovu has been raised in like a, kill or be killed kind of mentality where there was no room for him to actual play. So he's confused about the whole concept of playing tag. Well, so Kiara then is like, okay, let me speak in a language that you will understand, where she's trying to play like they're fighting. And it's like, then they kind of call like, oh, okay, so he's about to gear up and trying to play. Then Simba shows up, thinking like, oh, his daughter's in danger. And then Zira shows up, and Zira is like some mysterious mate of Scar's years ago, which never was addressed at all. And turns out that, Scar mated with her and had a son. What was that? Andy Dick's character. Nuka and our daughter Vitani. But Kovu was adopted, but somehow looks nearly identical to him in the first place, which is kind of odd. Don't know why did you have like a line that looks nearly identical to Scar but being adopted. Would it change all that much? Or matter of fact, I think it would have been better if it actually was Scar's kid rather than just being adopted. It doesn't really change all that much. So it's kind of weird that you chose the adopted route rather than just going, because you have clearly two older siblings. So clearly he made it. It wouldn't hurt much to make it have him have 3 kids. But Zira has animosity towards Simba and the Pride Landers because not only that they forced her and a lot of the lions from the Outlands and exiled them. Why? Maybe because they were followers of Scar at some point, and he didn't, Simba, because his grudge against his uncle, did not want any kind of potential usurpers amongst them, so he cast them out. Even though I didn't bring this up in the first film review, but there's very little male lions among all these female lionesses. So, all those male lions mated with a lot of the female lions, and all those children would have been related to one another. It's weird if you think about it, hard enough. But as a kid, you don't really think about that. You just accept it. but it's kind of like if you learn about lions a bit, that's kind of messed up. Anyway, uh, uh, Zira wants revenge on Simba after him being responsible for the death of uh, her mate Scar. So she's looks at Kovu as the rightful heir to Scar and the throne of the Pride Lands, because Zuka is just like inept and doesn't have none of the cunningness and none of the muscle, so would have been ineffective as any type of leader. So his only job is making sure to look after Kovu, because she sees him as like a proper heir. So she is raising him to be like this badass lion, which he ends up growing up to be almost like the spitting image of Scar somehow. While Kiara grows up to be like a fine lioness. Oh, and after there's like a whole cool song, probably like the only good song. There's been good songs here, but I think the song "We Are One" is in my personal opinion, the only good one out of this film, and it speaks to the theme of the entire film, which we'll get to at the end. So Kiara grows up to be a lioness, and she goes out on her first hunt, which Simba promises he will stay out of and let her do her own thing. But she is awful at it. She's making noise. All the antelope and all the other animals that she's trying to hunt hears her, runs off, and she can't chase worth a damn. And it's like, that is kind of like a mark of piss poor parenting on Simba's part, because he spends too much time coddling her, and I think Nala as well, because she's the lioness. She should be teaching her daughter how to hunt properly. So it's like you've been spending too much time coddling, or well, at least Simba was. But Nala, what's your excuse? It's like you just sat back and not making sure your daughter is a proper huntress. Because if you look up, how lions hunt, for the most part, it's the lioness that go out to hunt for the pride, and you not teaching your daughter how to do this. Like, it's more so on Nala's responsibility than anything else, while your daughter sucks because you spend too much time playing rather than like learning how to like hunt down meals for the pride. So Simba still sends out Timon and Pumbaa to look after him and make sure she doesn't get any trouble. It's kind of funny. As a kid, I always thought that was, I don't know, low key funny. Where it's like, you just promised, and he's like, just like, oh, make sure she doesn't get in trouble. It's like he just refused to let his daughter do her own thing. It's really funny. So once again, she busts them sneaking up on her. So she goes way off outside bounds of their kingdom, and then of course Zira plans out these machinations, realizing that Kovu is striking up a friendship with Kiara, so she has to plan on getting good with the daughter so he can get in close to assassinate Simba. So they put up this ruse to have Zuka and Vitani set a blaze, on this dry patch of grass, which causes this kind of fire, which Kovu comes to rescue Kiara, and then Simba and the others come to find them, and Simba's confused, like, why would you save my daughter? As like Kovu lies, it's like, I broke off from my pride. So I humbly asked to join yours. And Simba's like, hell no. And Nala comes in uh, Simba, what's wrong with you? He saved your daughter's life. Like, and then Zazu points out like, yeah, rules dictate that a debt must be paid. So we're in his debt, so we have to kind of facilitate his request. Uh, and and Kovu points out is like, oh, should I be punished for a crime I didn't commit? And of course, Simba's backed in the corner, even though he doesn't like it. Is the fact that because he's holding this massive grudge, and all he sees is his uncle through this kid, and the fact that where he grew up on the teachings of Scar, thanks to Zira, so it's like he has like a bad feeling about this whole entire thing, but he has no reason to argue. So he's like, fine, but I'm watching you. And like, he doesn't even allow Kovu to sleep with the other lions in Pride Rock. Like, no, 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 no. I say you can stay with us, but you don't get to sleep with us. You sleep outside. So the next day, Kiara goes out to try to hunt again, and Kovu tries to teach her how to hunt, which, like I said, something that her parents should have been on top of from the jump, but she ends up learning how to hunt properly without making stupid noises, kind of very rookie moves. And Kiara teaches him how to enjoy life because he never had the chance to actually play and enjoy things, the little things. But they grew closer in a relationship and stuff like that. Uh, uh, and of course, you see like Simba having this nightmare about Scar, throwing his father off the gorge, and he changes into Kovu, and he just, like I said, the trauma, Simba, looking back, because we kind of picked it up on as a kid, but as an adult, you learn a little bit more. As like, wow, this dude is seriously traumatized. Even after he beat Scar, he's still not over what Scar did to him and what he did to his father, because he looked up to his father as a hero, and the fact that his own uncle did what he did, he can't let go, and he puts the blame on Kovu, unjustly, and he hasn't looking to the sky and asked his father for some help, but he's not getting anything from the skies. And then, but Rafiki gets wisdom from the spirit of Mufasa about bringing Kovu and Kiara together. So you get this whole musical song, which is very low tier in my opinion, like Inupendi, which is like a Swahili play on the word upendo, meaning love. And then Simba decides, okay, I've been treating this kid kind of like a jerk. It was not fair. So the next morning, he goes to have a talk with Kovu about Scar, like the real story of Scar compared to what Zira's propaganda, what she been the propaganda she been feeding Kovu all those years about these stupid false hero stories, and Simba gives him the real stories, and Kovu is having his reality is being shattered that Scar was a real bastard. But then Zira shows up and drops the bomb that, oh wow, you set everything up nicely, Kovu, and then Simba's like beside himself, like you tricked me. And Kovu, who wanted to confess, because this whole lie reveal kind of scenario is not as egregious as most films typically depict this, but they tried to ambush Simba. The plan fails after Kovu intervenes, but as a result, it caused the death of Zuka. Zira lashes out, gives Kovu an actual scar. Now he looks exactly like Scar. He runs away, tries to go back to Simba and the Pride Lands, but he's like, no, you're banished. Do not come anywhere near us. Even though, like, Kiara like argues with Simba, and then she kind of like lashes out in tearful like fashion. It's like, you will never be like Mufasa, and it's kind of like that. It's jarring to hear that, because like, Simba looks up to his father so much, and to have somebody, especially your own kids, saying something like that, like, oh, you'll never measure up. Of course, he's speaking out of hurt, but it's just the fact that he's, get that kind of back talk from his own kid. But she ends up running away to try to find Kovu. They reconnect, and after Rafiki's intervening, Kovu and Kiara, decides like, okay, we gotta stop our clans from warring with each other. So they intercede and realize that, like, we're all one pride. There's no us or them, which is better handled than a lot of Disney properties these days, where it's like they're very over heavy-handed, kind of very like, like speaking, because you're dating yourself if you're trying to speak on something that's happening the here and now, rather than making it vague enough where at no point in time, well, I would say they make it timeless where you make it vague enough, rather than like making it so hyper specific that you end up dating yourself and people kind of be taking it out of it. Whereas like, yeah, you can speak on, like, you can do messaging in your films, but don't be hyper specific and don't be over heavy handed with it, where it's like you're talking down to your audience or, lecturing them. It's like, there's no us versus them. And bring it back to the whole "We Are One" song. They are us. And that's something that, Simba has to get over, with his prejudices and his grudge against his uncle, that they're not to blame for what his uncle caused. He need to be an effective leader, and that means to be a leader, you gotta bring people together, not forcing them apart because one looks up to you and the others don't. You gotta, and it speaks a lot about certain presidents or former presidents. Is a mark of a great leader is bringing the people together despite anything else. That's a mark of a good leader, because they are your people, no matter if they like you or not, kind of situation. But Zira just cannot let that go. She tries to attack Simba. Kiara intervenes and causes Zira to fall down into this ravine. She dies. And then all the lions go back to the Pride Lands, and now they are one pride. And Kiara and Kovu become like an actual legit couple. And then, you hear like the voice of Mufasa say to Simba, it's like, I'm proud of you, my son. We are one. And that's where the movie ends. It's a fun film. I wrote down some notes here because there's some parallels there from other stuff that I just can't help but think about. Because it wasn't a thing yet when I was a little kid when I saw this film. The title in and of itself has 3 layers to it. Is kind of I can't help but think about. when I was watching this. Like, Simba's pride, uh, Simba's lion pride as his like pack, uh, pride in his daughter, but being very overprotective of his daughter, and then his emotional pride because his prejudices towards the other lions from the Outlands. He had to get over, at least a couple of his prides. He can have pride in his daughter, but don't be smothering her. And then he's a he had the lion prides that there's no us versus them. They're all his pride. That he had to be a leader to all of them and help all of them and not push them, some of them away because they, didn't see you as the leader at that time or whatever the case may be that caused them to be outsiders. And then like Gilbert's emotional pride and prejudice towards like Kovu and what he thinks he represents. I really wish they point out like at what point did Scar father children and adopt Kovu? At what point did that happen? It had to be somewhere around the years when he was running the Pride Lands. They didn't even bring that up. Where were they? Where was Zira when Simba came back and fought off Scar? That would been, fun to acknowledge. This movie kind of reminds me of Naruto, where it's like in Naruto and Boruto. It's in Naruto, like Simba, always, looked up to the idea of being leaders of their respective lands. And that's their dream. That was aspirations. But they have to learn along the way what it really means to be a leader. But their children doesn't have those same aspirations. And they wanted to go their own way and find themselves rather than following the shadow of their fathers. I just can't help but think about, man, this is very Naruto, Boruto kind of thing. But once again, this is kind of like a timeless story that's been told in many different ways in many different mediums. Okay. And Kovu like struggles between his duty to carry on Scar's legacy, and what he actually wants in love for Kiara. And that's a little struggle he has to go through because he's been groomed to be like Scar. In the same way that Simba wants to be like Mufasa, but they both had to learn in different ways how to go their own way and what you want and not what, is expected of you. That kind of thing. There's a lot to that. There's layers to this that we don't give this movie credit for. That I thought it's like, man, there's a lot to this that is very good writing when you think about it. But that is Lion King 2 Simba's Pride. If you see this, if you haven't seen this, like, I don't know why you come here and have me spoil it for you, but I highly recommend you, watch this on Disney Plus. Watch it with your kids if you have any kids. It's a very good film, but watch the Disney 1994 animated classic first, then watch this right after. And then come back and let me know in the comments what you thought of Simba's Pride, because this is like a very good film. I knew I enjoyed this as a kid. I always knew I enjoyed this as a kid, but it's fun to revisit it after all these years. It's a fun film. But yeah, there's still quite a handful of movies I really want to talk about. I wanted to talk about this year for Father's Day movie review month. So it's going to be a handful I want to cover. Next Thursday, going to be 2 back to back, but a couple of days from now there's gonna be like one day this one movie that I want to talk about, then another day another movie, and that's what I'm gonna do for at least a little bit, because I just could not for a year I wanted to make sure that I'm gonna talk about them this year, and I do not want to wait, so I want to cover them in this month in a good package here for this final week of June. So stay tuned for all that. Tomorrow we'll be getting into some multiplayer games. So tomorrow evening, so look forward to that. And yeah, I'll see you all soon. Have a great weekend. Take care and try to stay hydrated. It's been hot in a lot of places lately, so be safe out there and try to stay cool, stay hydrated. Take care. I'll see you all soon.